Hi YouTube, this is Evie. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today we are going to be talking about how to help your relationship in kink if it's been getting stale, and how to prevent your relationship from getting stale in the first place. Now, this is inspired by a question I received from one of my people on Patreon. If you guys do have video suggestions or things that you want me to talk about, if you're a member of my Patreon, it is much easier for me to make time to actually film those videos, because even without getting any further video suggestions, I have enough ideas written down right now to film every week, twice a week for the next 6 months without adding any new ideas whatsoever, or adding any new content on top of what I've already do on this channel. So I have a lot of ideas out there, so it's best for me if I can, put in people's suggestions if they're on my Patreon, because it's easier to see, and, obviously people who support me, I want to be able to give back and help them out for what they do for me. Anyways, what we're going to be talking about, staleness in kink relationships. This is definitely not something that is at all exclusive to BDSM relationships. It happens in all types of relationships of any degree, of any type, of any length. It just happens. It's actually interesting because I think this is, in a lot of ways, a very vanilla problem. It's something that's interesting to think about, because when vanillas are dealing with the situation of, oh, my relationship is stale, we're dealing with a dead bedroom, I'm not getting what I want anymore, I don't feel fulfilled, etc. A lot of times people suggest or try to add on BDSM as an in the bedroom thing to spice the relationship up, which we can have a conversation about if that's good, bad, or otherwise, and what that means about people trying to layer on more on top of like a relationship is otherwise dying. And that's a different conversation from what we're talking about today, but I think, maybe we'll talk about it eventually. But what do you do to reinvigorate a relationship, make it spicier if it's already like a ghost pepper? Like, how do you do that? And I think it's actually a bit more simple than what I think meets the eye. And I think a lot of reasons why this happens is because people get into a BDSM relationship a lot of times with a very specific idea of what they want. A lot of times people will build up this thing that they want in their head. I want to be in a pet play relationship. I want to be in a 24/7 DDLG relationship. I want to be able to be in complete bondage and serving at my mistress's feet all the time. That's what I want in a relationship. And when you're going into things with a very specific mindset of this is what I want, that makes it harder later on to branch out when you sort of already drawn from that well multiple times. And that's going to be my first point, is explore new things, expand your horizons. And this really goes for anything in life, but it's particularly true in BDSM, because even though what we do is, has a lot of variety, has a lot of things in it, if you're going into a relationship with a very specific expectation of this is what I want, and then suddenly that thing becomes really stale because, man, this is like, I'm just getting like tired of doing this one scene all the time. I'm just getting like tired of acting this way all the time. Can we do something else? And it can feel dangerous, it can feel scary, it can feel just weird to try and branch out from that, but it's really going to be helpful for you long term, for long-term happiness, for long-term success, and just, having the fullness of life and fullness of kink experience that you're looking for if you go beyond just this is the one thing that we do, this is what our relationship is. For me personally, I am a pet player. That is kind of what I'm known for on the internet, is a pet player. But my sir and I make sure to make time for way more things than just pet play. Our relationship is not just that. We also do a lot of bondage. We also do things like knife play, blood play. We do cupping. We do fire play. Sir does electro play. We do shibari. We draw from a lot of different areas of kink, and there's not a whole lot out there that we haven't at least tried or thought about trying or are planning to try at some point in time. There's a lot out there that I think can, one, be combined with existing kinks and existing dynamics, or things that are completely different that can be really reinvigorating to the relationship to explore. And when you are doing this, I recommend trying out the first method, which is adding new kinks on top of your existing kink. If you have one thing that you do in your relationship, like you are a kitten player, and you want to add more on top of that, well, have you considered adding rope bondage to, enhance your sir, master, whatever, dom's ability to restrict your movement to make you more dependent like an animal? Have you considered adding something like water sports, where you can, have more degradation, more humiliation added, or just add something that makes it seem more realistically like you are an animal? If you are in a complete service relationship and you want to be able to relax and unwind and not have that service element, that's going to take a little bit more negotiation to add other things on, but maybe you could add stuff like humiliation, degradation, objectification, all of those related Asian things that we do in kink, but maybe that isn't part of what you already do for service. You can have it layered on there to make what you already do a little bit more interesting and a little bit more fulfilling. And that also gives you an opportunity to, as I have suggested in other videos, dip your toe in a new kink and something you already like before completely like swimming out into this new field you have no experience or idea if you're even going to enjoy at all. It's kind of like you want to try a new food, so you pair it with things that you already know that you like. So maybe you're like, well, I don't really know if I like salmon or whatever, but I know that I really like teriyaki. So I'm going to have like a teriyaki salmon burger, and that's how I'm going to try like introducing myself to fish. And maybe it turns out you hate fish, or maybe it turns out you really love fish. And from that point on, you can try other things that are like less and less familiar to your palate already, that allows you to expand your culinary horizons, or in this case, your kink horizons. Now you can also totally branch out and try new things you've never done before, and I would recommend doing that. But there is a process for how I would do that if you don't already have experience, and that is going to classes. This is my number one recommendation for making sure that what you're doing in kink doesn't get stale. Because if you're going to classes, you're constantly being exposed to new ideas, new methods, new relationship dynamics, new ways of doing kinks that you already do, becoming more familiar with kinks that you're not, and it's just a great way to get ideas. I'm not gonna, say this is you're plagiarizing by taking ideas from classes or getting inspired by relationships that you see, but at least when Mr. Tex and I go to classes together, when we go to conventions, it's just always really reinvigorating for our relationship. It reaffirms why we're doing what we're doing. It's very inspiring to hear stories and hear ideas from people who have been in the kink scene for 20, 30, 40, 50 years in some cases, and also just seeing other new people, other young people who are getting started in kink, but maybe doing something completely different, or maybe have like a very unique way of understanding or explaining a certain type of play that maybe didn't necessarily seem like something you would enjoy before. As well, a lot of times when you go to classes, there'll be some kind of demo, hands-on experience, or maybe there'll be a full-on play party afterwards that you can go to, where you get a chance to experience that new thing in a more controlled way, and that can be very helpful for, again, reinvigorating the relationship, adding something new as well. Now, beyond just the kind of play that I want to do is stale, or the things that we're doing are stale, you do need to also make sure that, especially if you're an S-type, that you're communicating with your partner on a regular basis about what your needs are. Don't wait until something is broken beyond repair before you fix it. Don't suffer for months and months and months being miserable with your play before you say something. Please do not do that. And as the D-type, it's very easy to kind of steer scenes and like, this is the kind of play that you're doing and yada yada. And maybe your dom really, really likes one kind of play. Maybe they really, really enjoy rope bondage and they're having so much fun during scenes that they don't even realize that you're like kind of bored and like halfway falling asleep by the time you get fully in the tie that you're doing. So make sure that you address that. And your partner may not realize that, oh, hey, you're actually really not satisfied. It may be just having a simple conversation about like, hey, these are things that I want to try. This isn't what's working for me. I'm looking for new things, etc. That is maybe all it needs. Also acknowledge as well, BDSM relationships and people's needs are not static things, especially if you've been in the scene for a month, 6 months, a year, whatever. Your tastes and your expectations are going to change a lot. based on what you actually see and what you actually experience. And renegotiation, by the way, I have a video about that, can be a very useful tool for making sure your relationship doesn't get stale. Because if you've been in a relationship for a year, what you want out of it may be very different from what you wanted out of it the first week or month you were actually in that dynamic, because you have just gotten that much more knowledge about who you are as a submissive or who you are as a dominant or what you want out of kink, and you can go ahead and renegotiate your dynamic to compensate for those changes. And that can be, again, like I'm going to say a million times in this video, very reinvigorating for a relationship, because hey, if you've been doing these same rules and these same punishments and these same rewards for 6 months to a year, maybe it's time to reevaluate those. Maybe it's time to change things up. Maybe it's time to, you know, embrace a even different energy in the relationship that you didn't have before. Maybe you're typically a really, really bratty masochist, but you want the opportunity to be able to serve in a very independent way from doing any sort of impact play or punishment, and you can renegotiate your dynamic to include play like that. Or maybe as well, and this is definitely something that I would say is better for relationships that are already open or already poly, and for the love of God, please do not play with other people just to make your existing relationship better, because holy I will stab you. Don't unicorn hunt, don't use other people as need fulfillment machines, don't do any of that stuff, because it's bad and it's awful. But if you're playing with a new person and you already enjoy them independently as their own person, you already really like the play that you're doing with them, taking a step back and having a chance to play with another person, interact with them, can make you look really inwardly your current relationship and understand more clearly the things that you want to have changed, the things that you realize you're not being fulfilled enough with, and all of that can definitely be illuminated by having another person there to be like, oh, I didn't realize this was the thing I really wanted a lot more in my life. Maybe I should talk to this about my other partners, because suddenly my scenes have this really completely different energy and experience when this, you know, gags are introduced, when blindfolds are introduced, etc., that maybe you don't try with your other partners that you already play with. So that is kind of what I would say in terms of helping relationships not get stale. Just make sure you're communicating actively and frequently, especially as the S-type. Make sure that you go to things like classes, stay open to trying new things, and if you want to try new things, slowly introduce them through using play that you already know how to do. A really great way as a submissive to introduce new play to a dominant is present it as a gift. You are giving your dominant the opportunity to dominate you, to be your sadist, to give you pain in a way that maybe you haven't done before. And the way that I would do it as an S-type is sometimes I would literally present a gift. Like, if I were going to get my sir something for Christmas as something that I wanted to potentially be able to do a scene with, I would wrap it up really nicely, and I would present it to them, and I would give them their first cane, their first flogger, their first set of wax play candles, their whatever. And then you're giving that as a gift with the understanding that from that point on, they get to decide if that item is used, when that item is used. All of that puts them, again, still in a position of power to decide how things are actually done, but gives them the opportunity to try something that maybe they haven't had the money to try, that they haven't had necessarily, you know, maybe they didn't know that you wanted to do that kind of thing. Maybe they didn't think that they wanted to invest $30, $40 in a cane before they started to do caning scenes with you, etc. So that could be a good way to do it as an S-type. As a D-type, you definitely really have a lot of leverage and ability, as long as you are staying within negotiated limits and boundaries, to introduce new kinds of play. So I think as a D-type, it's a little bit easier. But generally speaking, communication is key. I'm just going to put that here. Communication is key. Communication is key. Talk about your problems. Talk about your needs. Talk and read and go to classes and explore and be open. And that's really all I have to say. If you guys like this video, please do let me know down below. Any comments, questions, stories, concerns, etc., put those down below as well. If you want to follow me and see more of what I do, links to my social media are in the description box. If you haven't already and you want to see more, do subscribe because I make videos like this twice a week. If you want to support this channel, you want to help me be the best BDSM educator I can be, if you really like my content and want to see more, I would highly recommend checking out my Patreon. I have a ton of exclusive videos, exclusive content. I have like a really active Discord chat. I am potentially going to start streaming games soon, so if you want to be part of that, check out Patreon. But without anything else to say today, I am just going to leave it at, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.